Hey everybody, this is Grandmaster Ben Finegold. This is 5 Minutes with Ben. I'm Ben, and today we're going to look at the World Championship recap, game number 2. Yesterday we did game 1, and so forth. They alternate colors, so Ding has the white pieces and Gukesh has the black pieces. And let's have a look at the game. They played a symmetrical king pawn, and Ding played the Italian with bishop c4. And unfortunately for the spectators, in this position, Ding played a rather boring move. Yeah. And I always try to teach kids at the Nationals that you don't have to play knight c3 with white. You can try to play c3 and then d4 or b4 later and gain space with your pawns. But Ding played knight c3, and after, this is sort of like a symmetrical position where nobody can really claim an advantage. A6, A4, D6, and it's almost perfectly symmetrical. Castles, H6, stopping bishop G5, bishop E3, bishop E6, still a pretty symmetrical position. Anybody can take all the bishops and lead to some boring kind of bishopless position, but white played A5, gaining space on the queen side. Takes. Black could take on E3. The engine says white's a tiny bit better. Typically, black wants to control the D4 square, so like taking on E3 and giving up D4, and also opening the F file for the rook, that doesn't give black a lot of counterplay. So black just castled, and they got this symmetrical kind of pawn structure, and they traded queens. So the game wasn't the most interesting. There was one interesting point here. In this position, white would like to transfer the knight to d3. So white could play knight e1 to d3, attacking, putting pressure on the pawns. And the engine says if black tries to win a pawn by taking on a5, then white plays knight d3, attacking the pawn on e5 and c5. So black plays knight d7, then knight d5, attacking the c7 pawn. And the engine just gives away the c7 pawn and says black is slightly worse. But I was wondering, why not play c6? And the all-knowing engine said check. Knight to b2, which attacks the knight on d7. Knight f6. Rook a1, attacking the knight, which is now trapped. b6. And now just f3. And even though white's a pawn behind, the engine prefers white because white has the idea of knight a4 and then taking on b6, opening up the line for the rook here. And even though probably the players saw something similar to this, but didn't know if white had enough compensation for the pawn, and the engine actually prefers white quite a bit here because of the knight a4 takes b6 threat. So Ding could have played knight e1 and had a very small advantage, but instead he played rook d to c1, defending his c pawn and stopping black from having any ideas of taking this and then taking this. Knight d4, knight e1, the knight still wants to go to d3, good square for the knight, rook d6. And yeah, nothing much happened. They made some shuffling moves. Every day they're shuffling. And in this position, they repeated moves and the game ended without much going on. After knight c6, knight c3, they just repeated. So knight d4, and okay. And then draw was claimed. But in this position, after the move knight c6, knight c3, black could take on d1 trying to win that A pawn, because the rook on A1 is defending the knight and protecting the A pawn. Then we can throw in a check so the king doesn't protect the knights. And in this position, white is forking the C7 pawn and the E5 pawn, so white's going to actually be a pawn ahead. So black got greedy to take the A5 pawn. Now white's a pawn ahead. And the engine says white's much better in this position, or clear advantage to white. So instead of doing that, Gukesh just played knight d4, and they moved back and forth. So not as exciting as the first game. A lot of trades. Ding didn't play the most incisive way, and nobody really had a big advantage that game. Although if anybody did have an advantage, it was probably Ding a little bit, but nothing serious where you would expect somebody to win. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold. This has been 5 Minutes with Ben. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. It helps the channel out a lot. And I'll see you guys next time with more World Championship recap coverage, probably tomorrow, with 5 Minutes with Ben. Bye.